Assalamu alaikum guys, hope you are fine and doing really well out there. I welcome you on behalf of Ghazali College in a series of online lectures. Today we will be discussing on a major component of our study, that is reading and its types. Why I have selected this topic? Because I thought that this is really mandatory to make you people understand that what is reading. First of all, we will be defining its definition, and then we will be talking about its types. So without further delay, without further ado, let me talk about the definition of reading. Amir bhai, is it fine? So I am giving you just 1.5 minutes. Think, what is reading? Whenever you hear this term, what idea comes in your mind? What information do you have regarding reading whenever we say reading? So, what the first idea comes in your mind? Come on, hurry up and let me know regarding your responses. Till that, I will be defining this one. According to different researchers and according to different writers, what they have defined and how they have defined reading, that reading is a complex cognitive process. Yes, indeed, it is a complex reading or cognitive process. What we call this process, cognitive process, means a process which goes on in our mind, in human's mind. Whenever we see any written material, whenever we see any handout, or whether you may read text or newspaper, it means simply a content that is written, that is a kind of document, and you receive information from that text is known as, okay, it is known as reading. But what happens when you go through that text? Of course, there is a human process, there is a human mind process. Our mind works. We simply involve and engage our mind in a kind of practice, a kind of process that is simply known as reading. Suppose how we make children, or how we make our kids that you may start reading. Simply we show them, we teach them that this is a text. And initially, if you are familiar, that most of our teachers and most of our beginners, they start teaching their kids with alphabets and sounds. How students recognize and identify those alphabets and sounds, or you may call them symbols. They simply identify those symbols while seeing something. We need to show them something that is written. Okay, so when they perceive something, they simply try to identify the context. They simply try to identify and recognize the symbol that is written out there. Let's suppose we start teaching our kids that beta, this is an apple. Okay, apple. So the picture would be there. Understand? Picture would be there, symbol would be there. A kid or a child would be able to identify, and he will try first, then we will teach him or her second time, or maybe third time. So there would be a process in his mind. His mind will work out, and his mind will simply identify, okay, if that sign is not there, okay, we have taught him that brother, this is apple. Next day when he comes to you, what you see, you see simply he would be able to recognize apple without your support. Why? Because there was a process in his mind. Okay, so slowly and gradually he will understand all those alphabets which are written, because as per my knowledge, as per my information, reading is receptive skill. Okay, make sure that this is a kind of receptive skill. What we mean by receptive skill, maybe I have told you earlier in your previous classes, but if I don't, then let me tell you now that whenever we say receptive skill, it means we are talking about receiving something. We are interested to talk about reception. Okay, reception. So how we receive text. Okay, we receive text, we receive newspapers, and I'm not talking about here receiving by hand. Rather, we use this sense. As you are a student of intermediate, you might have idea about five skills of human being. Okay, taste of touching, taste of smell, taste of observing, so a taste of hearing and listening, and then there is another sense that is part of this topic, that is sense of sight. Okay, we see something, we perceive something through the sense of eyes. Okay, we have got this object, two human eyes. So these eyes will help us to receive something. Okay, suppose if your teacher is coming in a class and he says to his students that, okay, Azhar, you may start reading the text. So what Azhar will be doing? Simply Azhar will start reading his text. But how and why? Because simply a book will be in front of him and he will be taking help of his eyes and he will be going through that text. So that's why we are saying that this is rather receptive skill. Okay, and there is no productivity of yourself. You are not supposed to produce something, rather you are receiving something that is already existed. A text would be given to you, a newspaper would be given to you, and then you would be only involved to read something. Okay, and remember, reading is a skill, reading is an art. Once you acquire it, once you learn it, you would be considered, you would be known as a good reader. And it is a famous quotation that good readers are good leaders. Okay, so start reading the content, start reading books, whatever you have. When you involve, when you engage yourself, okay, your human mind, Allah Almighty has given us this human machine, a walking machine. Okay, how people are getting advancement in terms of technology while using computers, though human beings have created these computers. But the computer that we have, the computer that Allah Almighty has given to us, we are not utilizing it. It is a machine that this kind of machine is so strong enough to do anything, any task, because you might have heard that impossible is not impossible. Okay, we can make it possible. We can, if you are committed, if you are determined, and if you are self-disciplined. Rather, I would say, if you are self-disciplined, this is of course, you know, the matter of self-disciplining. If I'm not self-disciplined and I'm not fond of reading, or I'm not habitual of reading, how it would be easy for me to become a good writer, to become a good reader. And most of the time what we have seen, we have seen that students mostly feel difficulties in reading text, sometimes in their pronunciation, sometimes in their actual accent, and sometimes they simply don't understand what is written in front of them. Sometimes difficult words come to them, and they will start having a babbling, a kind of babbling, we would say. Okay, have you ever heard this kind of? So it will never happen with you if you are good reader. And how you would become good reader? When you know the value of reading, when you know the importance and significance of reading, that how reading is important. Reading is one of the best skill that you need to acquire, that you need to learn at any cost. Come what may, start reading at your own. Yes, at your own. You can read. You can read newspaper slowly and gradually. Suppose I have, seen many students, and students start complaining this. That said, I have started reading the newspaper, but what is the problem? I have problem of reading difficult words. There is a difficult vocabulary. How to cope with difficult, how to get understanding of this difficult vocabulary. A man, whenever you start reading slowly and gradually, you would be able to understand the difficult words as well. So reading, as I told you earlier, that it is a complex cognitive process. Okay, I have never used a word that it is an easy process. Rather, I have said that this is complex cognitive process. एक पेचीदा जहन का अमल होता है, एक पेचीदा हमारे माइंड का, ह्यूमन माइंड का एक प्रोसेस होता है. ओके, सो एंगेज योर सेल्फ. देन, so if we talk about types of reading, this was all about a brief introduction regarding reading, what it is. Okay, it is simply human process, human's mind process. Okay, sorry for inconvenience. So reading is a complex cognitive process, and this process involves reading of material, reading of books, reading of dictionaries, reading of newspapers. Okay, so whenever you talk about types of reading, I would tell you two major types of reading. Which are they? There are two major types of reading, and they are going to help you, and you are familiar. Okay, you all are familiar with these two types of reading. The first one is intensive reading. So when I say intensive reading, what I mean to say? I mean to say that it is a type of reading that we read intensively. Okay, we intend to read something, and what we intend to, यानी जब हम इरादा कर लेते हैं, मजबूत इरादे के साथ, बिल्कुल अपनी यानी तवज्जो के साथ पढ़ते हैं, what we need, we are interested to find out the information, we are interested to dig out the knowledge. Okay, textual knowledge, you may call it textual information. The major focus would be on getting information. Suppose all students of 9th, 10th, first year inter, they read their text on daily basis. Okay, not only from English subject, but from all courses. Suppose they start reading their textbook of biology, they start reading their textbook of chemistry, physics, Pakistan studies, even Sindhi. Okay, so what type of reading you are involved there? Simply students are involved in intensive type of reading out there. Why? Because they have their mindset that we are going to learn something, we are going to take information, and the most important thing, you are interested to learn vocabulary, okay? Vocabulary, grammar, and major aspects of language. Aspects of language. Okay, so this is what? This is a kind of intensive reading. Intensive reading involves your syllabus, your textbooks, even newspaper. Okay, why people are habitual of reading newspaper at their daily routine? Why? Of course, question arises here. If some people are habitual of reading or buying or purchasing newspapers, you might have seen there are even old people, okay, though they are not educated as we are. If uh, people from rural areas, there are so many people who are habitual of reading Kamish newspaper and Koshish newspaper. Why? Because they are interested to know, to understand what is happening around us. They simply want to connect themselves with the world, and then they simply want to connect themselves with with the within the circumstances and within the boundaries of their country, that what is happening in Karachi, what is happening in Hyderabad, what is happening in Islamabad. So how they will come to know? When they will read newspaper. And of course they will be busy, they will be engaged in intensive kind of reading. When I said intensive reading, means they are interested to find out the information, the knowledge, words, vocabulary, grammar, and language. Okay? So this kind of reading, you can say that this kind of reading is your academic reading. Okay? Academic reading means mostly we are involved in this kind of reading. So, if you are not intensively reading your text, you won't be able to understand what is written there. Okay? Let me give you a simple example. There are many students who have remembered and who have crammed all those poems, whether in Sindhi and Urdu and even in English. There are students, if you start asking them that, okay, start reading that poem, okay, without taking help of text, so how they will start? They will start like this: tu Habib, tu Tabib, tu Dadri, no, 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 this and this. So what they have done, simply they have intensively read that text or that poem. Understand? They were interested to find out the information, what is written there, what information, what contents are there. Okay, so if you are really intensive in your reading, then you would be able to remember many poems, even text. Okay, suppose Seven Ages of Man, there is a poem in Inter, the very first poem. If you are really intensive kind of reader, then you would be reading and memorizing that poem. If you don't have that handbook with you, you would be able to read that poem. Why? Because you are interested, and you are interested in this type of reading. Mostly students, mostly students need to apply this kind of reading. Okay, this kind of reading, that they are students, they are learners. Okay, learners must understand that in which kind of reading we are involved. There is another type of reading. Suppose if I start talking on this, this was intensive reading, when your aim is, when your objective is to understand the content or information. But But if you are not interested, if you are not willing to get the mastery of that information, then you would be involved in second type of reading, that is known as extensive reading. Okay, extensive reading. Which kind of reading it is? You would ask questions. Okay, so novel reading. Okay, novel reading. You may also include magazine reading. Magazine reading, they come in this type of reading. Why? Of course, you have a democratic right to ask questions. That's a why. In extensive kind of reading, if somebody is engaged in reading novel, do you think that he is engaged in understanding or in getting the information that is provided by the writer? I don't think so. Why? Because this main purpose of this his reading in this type of reading would be pleasure. Okay, pleasure, amusement. Okay, so he would be interested to please himself or herself. And how it gives him pleasure? because because of the story, because of the interesting story. Novels always contain stories. You may also include short stories. Okay, suppose when you are reading a story of Sasi and Punu, do you think that you are rather interested to know the information that is provided? Mostly you would be engaged in you know getting pleasure from that story, that what had happened, and what is special in this story, why it is famous. Okay, why people always share these kind of folk stories. Remember, these are known as folk stories, and these stories are the part of our culture and heritage. Okay, so when you are involved and engaged in extensive kind of reading or type of reading, it means you are not interested to understand or to get mastery of information or grammar or vocabulary, or even the content that is being provided there. Rather, you would be interested to amuse yourself, to please yourself. Okay. Okay, let me give you example. Let me give you a practical example of it. Are you fond of reading Kamesh newspaper and Koshish newspaper? There was uh, maybe it is the part of that thing or now not. I don't have idea. But once it was a part of that newspaper. फनी जो न्यूज़ आया करती थी. ओके, खुदा बचाए. ओके, खुदा बचाए. हिन जी मार खां, हिन जी जाल खां खुदा बचाए. This kind of part of newspaper. So most of the readers were involved and engaged in this particular area of newspaper for amusement, for the purpose of pleasure. They were not interested in knowing something, rather than pleasure. So extensive kind of reading is also the part of our reading, and most of the time we do read this kind of reading. We involve ourselves in this kind of reading as well. Suppose you are free, you don't have any work to do. Okay, you don't have any assignments, you don't have any classroom work, or there is no other any assignment. So when you are sitting free, when you have nothing to do, what would you do there then? Of course, you would simply try to read maybe you know, funny stories, okay, maybe magazines, and then a kind of novel that is interesting, that is interesting one. So you would involve yourself, you would engage yourself in that kind of reading. And the most important thing, that is the part of this reading, that whenever we read, whenever we apply this kind of technique or type of reading, we are not attentive towards that kind of reading. Suppose if I am reading novel and at the same time I am watching television as well, so what happens? It means nothing, a kind of impact is going to happen with me. Why? Because at the same time I'm watching movie, I'm watching television and reading novel as well. So sometimes I focus here in reading, and sometimes I divert my focus towards watching movie. So what? It means you are not interested in content, okay? Rather your only purpose of reading is to amuse yourself. You would be amused, you would be pleased at the end, okay? So and it also happens when you read newspapers. Newspaper comes in both categories, intensive reading as well as extensive reading. Suppose if you are involved in reading a special portion of newspaper that is from sports, or maybe from Bollywood, okay, so what you would do simply there, you will simply go through that portion, okay, and you would be interested to know that which movie is coming in this week, which superstars movie is coming, and you would also be interested to know your favorite heroes and their lives, okay. So this kind of reading is the part of your extensive, extensive reading, in which the main purpose and the main motive of our reading would be to 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 amuse ourselves. Why? Because sometimes it is the part of human nature, yeah. It is part of human nature that sometimes we feel irritated, we sometimes feel ourselves bored. That's why you would say, yeah, I'm not interested today to read the handouts provided by physics teacher, or I'm not interested to go through the handouts provided by English teacher. Rather, I have made my mood to apply a kind of extensive reading, because I simply want to amuse myself, okay. Of course people do enjoy their readings, and this is not only the thing that you may go for swimming and you would enjoy, you may go for walk and you may enjoy, and you may go for uh, you know bicycling and enjoy. No, there are other sources as well. There are other sources. Suppose reading is one of the source of your pleasure and joy. I have seen many readers who simply enjoy their readings. So what we have to do as a learner, as a readers, and I love readers. Those who are good readers, they would surely become good writers. Understand? So Amir bhai, how much time is remaining? If I try to conclude the okay, thank you for your uh, alarm. Thank you for your indication. So guys, let's have a quick review, a quick replay of this today's session that we have talked about. We talked about reading itself. It is one of the skill of language. Then we said that it is a complex cognitive process of human mind. Cognition, it is taken from cognition, means human mind. So indeed it is a complex, not an easy task. Involve yourself, engage yourself, and try to compel your mind that he may start reading. Okay, then we talked about two major types of reading. First one was intensive reading, when our aim is to get idea, to get information from text, from newspapers, from dictionaries, and from different sources. Then we talked about extensive kind of reading, that is only when we only have a kind of mind that I'm going to please myself, to get amusement from this kind of reading, and we read different short stories, novels, maybe sometimes magazines. Okay, so at the end of this lecture, I will send you related material regarding reading and its types. Hopefully, you will go through that handout, and it is going to help you out whenever you engage yourself in reading. And at the end, I will also say, and I will emphasize on this thing, that please make yourself as a good reader, because when you are a good reader, let me repeat this idea, I have repeated thrice. Okay, so try to be good readers. Thanks a lot, we'll see you inshallah day after tomorrow.